Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As business attorneys for healthcare practices, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme is What Now? Each episode will involve a real client story with a high-pressure moment for that practice.
All right, before we get today's show going, I have to let the audience know that we're off the rails already before we start recording. Michael, you sent me an article that personally attacked me.
That's not true, Brad. It's historical, and I thought you liked history.
Yes, I like history, but this is clear harassment, and this article is pure propaganda.
Okay, audience, so for everyone listening and for the very few of you who would actually care about what we're about to talk about, there is a story out of Ireland where a counselor wants to build a statue honoring who allegedly killed Oliver Cromwell.
Yeah, hold on. First off, for those who aren't history fans like myself, Oliver Cromwell was an English statesman, farmer, and soldier, widely regarded as one of the most important figures in British history, so kind of important to England. He came to prominence during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, initially as a senior commander of Parliament Army and later as a politician. He died in 1658. Now, Michael, I think you buried the lead here as to why I dislike this article, as to who do they believe killed Oliver Cromwell.
I'll just have to say, after listening to you for a moment, you truly sound like a history geek. I mean, buff right now. Wait, did I say that out loud or was that in my head?
All I heard was I'm buff, so thanks. But let's get back to who killed Oliver.
Fine, Brad. A mosquito. The statue is going to honor a mosquito.
Yeah, a mosquito. Let me pause you right there. For all the things to memorialize, they chose my mortal enemy.
I don't think you have any mortal enemies, Brad. I think you like everyone. You're the classic Labrador.
No, absolutely do have a mortal enemy. It's mosquitoes. They hate me, but they love me. So I don't know which it is because they attack me like I owe them money.
Well, they hate you. They love you. Your tail is wagging. Either way. But I have seen this. I've witnessed it. I've traveled with you, and you could be in a group of 100 people, and somehow the mosquito will find you. Now, I do have a curiosity because my wife is the same way, and I wondered if we stuck the two of you out in the Texas summer, who would win or lose.
I guarantee it would be me. But I wonder if I'm on some kind of mosquito VIP blood list. Maybe it's because I taste like red wine and vodka.
Well, I'll say there is no doubt that every mosquito that gets some of your blood probably explodes within 30 seconds.
Or they're too drunk to fly ever again. Well, this isn't funny though. You get to the point where like, oh, whatever, I got bit. You're like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, it starts swelling up. It itches like crazy. I'm basically doomed for the next several hours.
Okay. All right. Let's get the little violin out. Let's get back to the article for a moment.
Okay.
So the idea is this mosquito apparently may have given Cromwell malaria during a siege, and for some reason they want to honor it with the world's smallest statue.
Yeah, and that's where I draw the line. First off, why are we rewarding mosquito for just doing its job? I mean, it's not like you could see it in Indeed or ZipRecruiter, the job description for mosquito. Show up, ruin Brad's life, leave.
Brad, I'm thinking we all are starting to get the point. You are definitely starting to sound like a diva.
Oh, I thought I was a diva, but okay, thanks. Second of all, if they're building the statue for mosquitoes, they should have a monument for me, because I think I've sacrificed more blood than Cromwell, and it can be interactive. Children can press the button and hear me complain about mosquitoes.
I think that exists. It's called this podcast.
Ouch. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the real takeaway. If there ever is a statue built honoring mosquitoes, I will not attend the unveiling.
You won't survive the unveiling?
No, I mean, if there are a lot of mosquitoes, they're probably not. If there are mosquitoes there honoring that statue, then I'm going to be the guy covered in head to toe in bug spray with a hazmat suit on, waving from a distance with my sign protesting, saying, "Kill all mosquitoes."
Okay, let's let's move on. Let's transition into today's topic, which fortunately, audience, has nothing to do with mosquitoes.
As far as you know. All right, Michael, it is well established that I love history. And today we're going to talk about what happens with your business history starts catching up to your presence. As we said earlier, the season is our theme is concentrating on what now. So today's question is, I'm a board member. What now?
Yeah, and just for a little primer, we've talked a lot about the different hats that can be worn inside of a business, and a board member is one of the hats. You'll hear it if depending on what type of business entity you are. It might be a director if you're in a corporation, so you hear board of director. Or if you're in an LLC format, it might be called a manager, but the gist is the same. The role of a board member is to help with that vision and strategy of the business. They are the epicenter for decision-making. And even for smaller businesses, the board sometimes has a more active role in the details in the day-to-day. But I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but hopefully that gives us a framework.
Yeah, good context there. I know you love context. So today's story is about a group practice. We'll call them the Three Kingdom Medical Practice. And it centers around Dr. Ireland, who is an incredible neurosurgeon and the founder, with basically has absolute powerhouse of a guy.
You must have been inspired in a moment of creativity to use those names.
Oh, yeah,
from our
very,
story.
very
Yes.
creative, yeah. Now, they start with one location, and they're actually now operating in 3 states.
Okay, that's impressive when we see a practice scale, especially scaling across state lines.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's incredibly impressive. And to be clear, this is not a cautionary tale about failure. It's a success story that does hit a point. And Dr. Ireland built this business by making fast decisions, big moves, expansions, etc.
Okay. I want to hear more.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, so it worked. It really worked. He built something extraordinary. But here's the key. He never stopped acting like a solo operator.
Is that the warning cue that I've been bracing for? Even after bringing in partners?
Yep. By the time our story starts, there are 9 board members. A lot of them are partners, obviously, but basically one decision maker. Dr. Ireland is still steering the ship like it's just him that he has to answer to.
This does not sound good. I mean, regardless of what Dr. Ireland, what hat he was wearing, to make these decisions. I mean, even if the board appointed him as an officer to kind of run with things, the officers are still accountable to the board. And if he was doing this as one of 9 board members, that's even more problematic if he's just kind of a lone wolf doing things.
Yeah, and on the surface, everything looked fine. They had their annual meetings. They shared financials. They actually had board meetings, I think, 4 times a year. And they were growing, and all the owners are real happy because they were making a lot of money.
Well, you said on the surface. I'm guessing since you're telling the story that we're about to go beneath the surface.
Ooh, I like your water reference there, Michael. So yes, let's provide more information. All was going great, but as these meetings were going, no one really asked any questions.
You think it was because everybody was just deferred to Dr. Ireland?
Yeah, it could be that they were deferring to him, or that's always the way. This is how it's always been. This is the way it'll always be. And now in our story, we're going to enter 2 new partners who then became board members, which are Dr. Oliver and Dr. Cromwell. And they were, again, very successful surgeons, but they also had kind of a business background and sharp, successful. And more importantly, Michael, they had a lot of curiosity.
Well, I do too. I'm wondering why we didn't name one of these Dr. Mosquito after all
My
your
mortal
carrying
enemy?
on. Yes, exactly. But you said curious. So every good board member should have that level of curiosity. So I think that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I agree. And so they started asking questions like, why is this happening over here? Why is this happening there? And, what is going on with this location that's underperforming? And why don't we have the contracts as to what's going on over here? And what is actually accountable? Who's accountable for making all these decisions?
Okay. I mean, these seem like fair questions. Is this where things kind of started coming to a head?
It is. So one of the newest offices started losing money, like I should say significant money, actually draining the profitability basically of the Three Kingdoms medical practice. It was losing so much money. And when doctors Oliver and Cromwell asked why, there weren't that many great answers coming from Dr. Ireland. They were actually frustrated that there was not more planning that went into this particular new location and size, scope, and everything of that sort, including there were a huge number of staff and providers that were hired for this new location.
So everything's working until you start losing money, and then everybody starts paying attention.
Exactly. And other board members started to kind of join the doctors Oliver and Cromwell, wanting better to understand the numbers and who is supposed to absorb all these losses.
Yeah, I mean, these are not only fair questions, they're questions they should have been asking all along. I mean, as a board, part of the accountability is understanding, the accounting and the financials, and so in a medical practice specifically, there's different compensation systems or different distribution systems that can be in place, and so it becomes important to understand first, how did you set it up, and then how is the money actually being tracked, and so they can start to understand, where is, who's at risk for a loss like this.
Yeah, and so just trying to better understand, Michael, accounting is not doing well and losing money. Is that bad?
I've heard that that's frowned upon.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I was just making sure I was on the same page too then.
Yeah.
All right. So then this is where doctors Oliver and Cromwell really started to see that the Three Kingdoms medical practice had all these agreements and governances and structures that they signed when they became owners and partners. But really, in reality, everything ran through one person, Dr. Ireland.
I've got a concept that is pretty novel. We've never talked about it before, and it's actually groundbreaking.
Okay.
There's something called form and substance.
No, I've never heard of that.
Yeah. Seriously, audience, we've talked about this a lot, and this is yet another example of, a risk really coming to life is when you have a set of documents that say one thing. As you said earlier, Brad, they on the surface were doing all of the things the right way. They were having their meetings, they were having the minutes, and they had all the corporate governance stuff happening. But in reality, what was happening was Dr. Ireland was doing everything, and there can be to this point a big risk when you have that kind of disconnect.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this so far does definitely sound like they had everything in place, the form-wise, but it doesn't seem like they're following it. So as we assisted the board members to really better understand the model, we started to learn a lot. They had actually a lot of outdated contracts that were using undefined and no really true delegation of the leadership roles, basically no real accountability structure, not talking financially, but from a leadership perspective. And their leader, Dr. Ireland, again, still a good doctor, was still practicing medicine almost full time while running this multi-state enterprise basically alone. And he, as you can imagine, Michael, being a one person, became a bottleneck for a lot of decision-making and analysis.
Yeah, it's so common. You're the doctor making things happening, and he did make things happen, got this thing to 3 states. But, at some point, every human reaches their limit. And if you don't do something about it, then you hit that bottleneck moment where you're stretched too thin and you're kind of doing everything poorly to try to manage things. Hopefully not patient care poorly, but
yeah.
Well, let's go into break and catch up on the Three Kingdoms medical practice and what it could have done differently.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, for those who don't know this season, our theme is What Now? And this show, we're exploring when I become a board member, what now?
Yeah, so our context, our story is built around the Three Kingdoms medical practice. Our Dr. Ireland is kind of the OG for this practice, and he really built it up and was able to scale it to 3 locations in 3 different states. And it was highly reputable and highly successful. And as he grew, and added partners, they were kind of on paper getting ownership and a board seat. But really things were just continuing to run through Dr. Ireland until we met 2 of the newest partners, Dr. Oliver and Cromwell, who asked questions, particularly as they noticed that there was some financial losses happening. And that's where we started to talk about the friction and see that there was a lot of questions being asked and a lot of problems surfaced by the fact that we had Dr. Ireland kind of being a one-man show in a 9-man setup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, we have owners, we have new owners, new board members, lots of people, and Dr. Ireland didn't change anything. In fact, he was acting just the same, even with all the growth that they were having. And so just hearing this story in mind, and I'm just going to put you in the spot right here, Michael. What was your initial takeaway as to how do you think Dr. Ireland was acting?
Oh, I think he was a pirate, Brad. He was acting, and he was in, pirate mode early on. It was just him, and he was treating patients, to your point, and also trying to grow a business. And, we know how that works. You are truly going fast and breaking things just to make everything happen. And he was growing successfully, probably with so much success that he eventually became a pirate. and that's just how things went. You did things the way you did things, and you kept going, full throttle. And so, yeah, that's what I think, Brad. I'm curious what you think.
Yes, I actually agree with you. This is really a perfect example of just sticking with pirate mode, because it works until obviously it doesn't. And, and the other board members and owners, we've talked about this before. Who doesn't like hanging out with the pirate? It must have been fun to be with Dr. Ireland, as he was moving so much and doing so many things. And they were, along for the ride, or I guess cruising with them. I guess we're using shipping terms. But, like you said, but the practice kept growing. And as they kept adding new locations, Dr. Ireland just didn't change anything, because that's the way it's always been done. So definitely a pirate.
Yeah, we were talking to one of our friends just to kind of think about risk if you're a pirate. So let's pretend, and this probably is true for Dr. Ireland. Let's pretend that he's right 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And clearly he was on a roll, right? And he got it scaled up to 3 locations. The problem is when you're a pirate, is you're on your own, you're making decisions, you're going, and you have a 10% blind spot. And the benefit of having partners, I don't want to say it out loud, but there's a benefit to having you as a partner, Brad. Earmuffs.
Should we just spend the rest of the conversation on that?
The 5% of the time that I'm wrong, I've got you. Look, you're there, to, kind of be a set of, hold a mirror up to the situation and see where the blind spots are. And, when you're a pirate like this, you've got a blind spot, and you're not taking advantage of the fact that you have a room full of partners who could be helpful. And so then you end up making some bad decisions, and bad decisions have legal consequences. It could be a contract that blows up. Now you've got, of course, partners with unmet expectations because of money issues. And so, yeah, it can create quite a bit of risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. Dr. Ireland, he did what he wanted to do. He ran a very successful practice. He wanted it to be successful. However, he was just no longer just acting like a pirate. And I agree with you. He became a pirate. And it's not about his personality, right? It's not a personality test from that perspective. It's just about how his behavior was. And he had these other leaders in the organization, but they weren't really making any major decisions. They were just happily, again, relying on him to help run the business and make them money. And so that's why it's again, fun to hang out with pirates, I guess. But let's take another step back and remind our audience as to what would be the role of a good board of directors in general, and what is their duties, and who there's responsibilities to.
Yeah, and you can extend where we started the conversation at the very beginning, and I talked about a board role of vision and strategy, but it's even bigger than that. I mean, they are overseers of the organization, in many ways the protectors of the organization. So they are accountable to the owners, but they have what's called a fiduciary duty to the board, to the company. And so they have this responsibility to make sure everything's buttoned up. And so, it creates risk because they're there to look at the strategy, as I mentioned, the financial and legal compliance. They're looking at the stakeholders. And so you have a couple of issues. One is if you're a board member who is acting like Dr. Ireland and being a pirate, you could be creating risk by your behavior. And by the way, if you're a board member who's just showing up to the meetings and drinking coffee and signing off because that's the way we do it, you actually could be creating risk because you're not carrying out your responsibility as a board member. And so it often gets checked off as a formality of, our lawyers told us we need to have a board. And it really is a important role for this successful run practice.
Yeah, I agree. And for audience members, Michael mentioned fiduciary duty. That's to understand a true board member owes a fiduciary duty to the organization itself, rather they don't owe that fiduciary duty to the shareholders or the founders or any other interest group. It's only to the organization itself. Meaning, as a board member, we've some people call it asleep at the wheel, where if you show up and you don't ever really ask any questions, or you're not really curious, you're not really doing your duty as a board member. You're supposed to ask those questions. You're supposed to better understand what are they doing? Is that decision the best interests of the corporate entity? And you're generally expected to, at the end of the day, protect the entity, protect the financials of it. That doesn't mean you might not make bad decisions, because you can make bad decisions, but you're supposed to be part of it and care about it. And then, so a lot of times you'll hear people talk about the duty of care or the duty of loyalty or the duty of obedience. All these are factors when you're a board member that you have more than the drink the coffee requirement and show up and high five.
Yeah, a lot of states have a standard they call the business judgment rule, where a board member, they don't have to make the right decision necessarily, to your point, but there needs to be some soundness to it. So we talked a moment ago about, an absentee board member who's just kind of drinking their coffee. I mean, they may not pass that business judgment test if they're not engaged in asking questions and doing things. And so it's you got to be careful. And I'll also add, you're right that the fiduciary duty generally is to the corporation, but there is some nuance there. And some states will look at your documentation and may read in that you intended to create a fiduciary duty to the shareholders, and so there's a great responsibility, and generally, to your point, that risk is to the practice.
All right, so we've now established basically how pirates run a board, or a board member who's a pirate. Let's switch to see how a cruise director run a board or be a board member.
Yeah, so you're going to have formality, Brad. I mean, cruise directors love boards because that is a formal part of the governance. And so they really lean into the governance side of things. I mean, you're going to have your meetings. You may even have more meetings than you need to be compliant. And you're going to have rules. And you'll have your bylaws and then add-ons to that. And so you're typically going to find, from a governance perspective, everything really tight and tied together.
Yeah, that's a fair. And I feel like sometimes when you're dealing with a cruise director, they have so much, it actually becomes more of a stalemate. They can't decide anything. There are 9 or 10 people in a room debating every single issue. They're no longer really running a business. They're just hosting conferences or a meeting to have a meeting about the meeting. And let's just discuss some of the negative impacts they could have on the boardroom, as you know, and in this case, the medical practice. For example, they identify a compliance issue, like how they're delegating and supervising to maybe the people, and maybe the following actions. They schedule a recurring meeting with legal and operations and clinical teams, and they redebate it, and they look at the regulatory interpretation, but they avoid ever making a decision without, total certainty, because they want to be certain before they do anything. And when this happens, this actually can confuse your risk management versus risk elimination, right? Which is, it's impossible in healthcare. There's always some type of risk, but they feel good about it because they've been meeting about it so much. All right. So, Michael, do you have any other examples of a negative effect a board of cruise directors can have?
Oh, this is a leading question because you know exactly what I'm going to say. You and I've learned over the years as directors, kind of pre our ByrdAdatto days, being on boards, that there are some definite trappings that can happen with this. Just, you never make a decision. You just keep talking about it, setting meetings. And our favorite was, you take an agenda item and you couldn't get to a decision, so you stick it in the parking lot.
The parking lot.
The parking lot's where all ideas go to die. They die. They don't go anywhere. There's just some nebulous parking lot that you never come back to and pull it out of. And but that is, if you have something like that, that is, a test of like, okay, am I acting like a cruise director, and are we actually doing actionable things, or are we just making ourselves feel better because we've got all these policies and meetings?
Yeah. And I think in this particular case, we all probably can agree they need to start acting like Navy SEALs, the Navy SEAL board. And by clarifying leadership roles, or have someone appointed as the CEO or the chief medical officer or chief of operations, defining the powers of these officers and responsibilities to report back to the board. And if you're focusing on the teams, make sure, like, if there's a finance committee or a compliance committee or growth strategic committee, whatever those committees are, they have a duty to take care of things and report back to the board to help this thing keep moving forward. What are your thoughts about how the Navy SEAL will handle that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. There's that strategic element that's involved, but I'm curious, Brad, what happened with the Three Kingdoms medical practice?
It was a struggle. At each time, the board would meet to have corrective actions on implementing updates pushed by Dr. Oliver and Cromwell and one person. Dr. Ireland kept pushing back, and Dr. Ireland was a pirate. He lives as a pirate. He acted like a pirate, and he did not know how to act as anything but that, and he couldn't shift to the Navy SEAL mode. And eventually it all came crashing down, unfortunately, because several of the board members, including Drs. Oliver and Cromwell, left the practice as they just couldn't get Dr. Ireland to change his ways, as you can imagine. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, it's so tricky because you have good doctors who are good partners because of what they contribute clinically, but they don't necessarily have the interest on the business side. Yet, you give them these business roles just because that's what you do. And so there is an importance to being intentional and strategic when you're building out your infrastructure for your practice, and having clarity on the purpose of the meetings that you have, or the board and or other meetings, so that you don't get into a situation like this. You definitely want to avoid, being a pirate or acting like a cruise director.
There you go. All right, audience members, next Wednesday show we'll be back and we'll discuss A Physician is Leaving My Practice. What now?
Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.